year again. The sun was starting to shine more, and the shoots from the new plants were starting to push their way up through the earth. The fairies and elves were getting ready for their Easter feast and spring cleaning their houses. Petal, the polishing fairy, had finished all her spring cleaning, and she sat at her table and wondered what to do. She decided to go and have an explore and have a look what was new at the railway. She took off from her home on the stump, her little wings fluttering quickly. She flew through the enchanted woodland until she reached the fairy and elf picnic glade, and her wings started to become tired. So she flew down and she sat on a little picnic bench. She was just stretching her wings when she heard, "Excuse me." It came from below the table. She looked down and there was Mrs. Duck, sat in a feathery nest. "Good morning, Mrs. Duck," said Petal. "How are you on this beautiful spring morning?" "I'm very well, thank you," said Mrs. Duck, "although I am feeling slightly peckish. Would you mind looking after my eggs for me while I go and have a little snack?" "Of course," said Petal, and she flew down under the table. Mrs. Duck stepped out of her nest, and there was the little feathery cradle of 12 white eggs. Petal climbed into the nest and got herself comfy on a particularly comfy patch of feathers. Mrs. Duck waddled off and called, "I won't be long." Petal was so tired from all her cleaning, and she was so very comfy, she decided to close her eyes just for a minute. Some time later, she was awoken by a scratching noise outside of the nest. 2 pointy brown ears popped over the edge of the nest, followed by 2 big brown eyes. "Oh, Bobtail! You did frighten me." Bobtail, one of the Braybrook bunnies, was outside the nest. A moment later, another 2 brown ears and brown eyes popped over the edge of the nest. This time it was Fluffkin, the Braybrook bunny. "Hey," said Fluffkin, "I didn't know fairies laid eggs." Petal and Bobtail laughed. "They don't lay eggs," said Bobtail. "No, we do not," said Petal, "but we are very good at looking after things. I'm looking after these 12 eggs for Mrs. Duck." Bobtail looked into the nest. 12 eggs, did you say, Petal? "I'm afraid there only appears to be 11. Petal jumped up and looked into the nest. She had a little count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now that can't be right. She had another count. Why don't you count along with me, children? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Bobtail was right. One of the eggs was gone. Petal sat down in the nest and put her head in her hands and let out a few tears. "Whatever am I going to do?" she said. "Mrs. Duck's going to be so upset if she comes back and realises I've lost one of her babies." Fluffkin, the bunny, put his head over the edge of the nest and nuzzled Petal with his little velvety nose. "Don't cry, Petal," she said. "We'll help you look for her. It can't have gone far." "You're right," said Petal, and she dried her eyes on a nearby leaf. "It's no good me sitting and crying about it. We'd better get looking." Petal and the Braybrook bunny started to look for the egg. They'd been searching for quite some time. Petal was getting rather distraught. She was looking in a particularly brushy part of brush when Bobtail hopped over. "Petal," he said, "I've had an idea. I'm going to go and get my brothers and sisters. If we all look, we'll surely find it sooner." And off he hopped with a flick of his white tail. Petal and Fluffkin carried on looking. A little while later, Bobtail returned. He'd brought all his brothers and sisters. There was Cottontail and Flopsy and Hopper and Scruff and Clover and Juniper and even Martha and Dandelion. He'd brought the whole family. They all spread out searching for the egg. Fluffkin searched all the way round Cowslip Warren, while Bobtail searched all the way down Cowslip Lane. The rest of the Braywood bunnies spread out through the enchanted woods, looking in nooks and crannies for the lost egg. Petal flew round all the fairy and elf houses and asked them if they'd seen the egg. She even asked the goblins, but none of them had seen it. She flew down to the river near the troll bridge and had a look along the riverbank, but it wasn't there either. Petal sat down on a stone on the riverbank and began to cry. Suddenly a gruff voice said, "Who's that making that funny sniffling noise?" Petal looked up. It was Gormley the troll. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Gormley. I can't help myself. I've lost Mrs. Duck's egg, and she's going to be so upset if I can't find it." A guilty look passed Gormley's face, and he started to fiddle with the button on his dungaree. "Wait there a sec, I'll be back in a minute," and he ducked into his house. He was back a moment later, something cupped tenderly in his hands. "What have you got there?" Petal asked. "Promise you won't be angry?" Gormley asked. "I promise," said Petal. And he opened his hands. There, sitting on Gormley's hand, was the missing egg. "Gormley, were you going to eat Mrs. Duck's egg?" Petal asked. "No, I was not," said Gormley. "I don't like egg." "Then what were you going to do with it?" Petal asked. "Promise you won't laugh?" "I cross my heart," said Petal. "Well, you see, us trolls are mean and grumpy, but I'm tired of being mean and grumpy. It's very lonely. I thought if this little duckling hatched, it could get to know the real me, and it wouldn't expect me to be mean and grumpy. I thought it could be my first friend." Petal was so happy that she'd found the lost egg. Gormley extended his hands out to Petal. "You'd better take it. I really will be a mean troll if Miss Duck gets upset." Petal flew up to Gormley's hand. "I will take the egg," said Petal. "But I'd love to be your friend too." Petal asked him, "Would you like to come to our Easter feast?" A toothy grin spread across Gormley's face. "I've never been invited anywhere before. I would love to come, thank you." Petal took the egg and flew off back through the woodland. On the way, she was sure she should feel the egg move. She finally came back to the fairy glade, where the Braywood bunnies were sat waiting for her, having looked everywhere. They let up a cheer when they saw Petal flying into the clearing, holding the egg. Petal flew down and placed the egg in the nest. She hugged Fluffkin and Bobtail and said thank you to all the Braywood bunnies for all their help, and invited them to the Easter feast. The Braywood bunnies agreed, and they hopped off to go and make some hot cross buns, leaving Flufftail and Bobkin and Petal at the nest. "Oh, thank goodness you found it," said Fluffkin. "Yes," said Bobtail, "but where did you find it?" "It was down by the riverbank." Petal thought about her answer quite hard. She didn't want to tell them exactly where she found it. She didn't want them to think badly of Gormley. Luckily, she was interrupted by Mrs. Duck coming back. "I'm back. I got a lovely breakfast from the man in the green jumper," said Mrs. Duck. "Thank you for looking after my eggs, Petal." "You're very welcome," said Petal. "But we really must go off now and get ready for the Easter feast." A little while later, all the fairies and elves and Braywood bunnies were gathered at the Easter feast. Petal flew up into the air and said to everybody, "Thank you everybody for coming to our Easter feast. I'd like to say an extra special thank you to the Braywood bunnies for all your help today in looking for the egg. Also, I hope everybody doesn't mind, but I've invited one more person to our fairy and elf feast. I've invited Gormley the troll. He's very misunderstood and he's been awfully lonely for a very long time. He wants to be our friend, so I'd love it if you could all make him feel welcome." Just at that moment, Gormley shuffled into the clearing, looking slightly awkward. The fairies and elves and bunnies cheered hellos, and Petal beckoned him over to where she'd saved a seat next to him. Gormley sat down and joined in the fun and conversations. He even made several new friends. Halfway through the feast, Mrs. Duck came waddling out from under the picnic table, looking rather pleased with herself. Behind her came a stream of little brown and yellow fluffy ducklings. Petal and Gormley looked at each other and shared a smile, happy to see 12 little ducks all together with their mum, safe and sound. We hope you've enjoyed our Easter story. Can you remember what the fairies were doing in the morning? Post a comment so I can see you enjoyed my story. A massive happy Easter from all the fairy and elves at the miniature railway. Goodbye!